We should be live in a second. I hope we're live. Guys in the audience, if you can just give us a feedback that you can see and hear us. Oh, in a huge delay. Yeah, I also see us on YouTube. Hey, here we start. So, I go first. Oh, we should give it a few more minutes so everybody will join us. Let's wait for a minute. In the meanwhile, I can ask you in front of everybody, how are you doing, Minko? I think everybody in the Israeli community is really excited to have you here today. And yeah, everybody can hear us, as I say. So let's go. You know what? I will go with my first talk for today. And okay. So I hope that everybody here are safe and healthy. And unfortunately, we still can't organize meetups in person. So we will continue with our online events. And today we have a really special event hosting two Angular superstars, myself and Shai Reznik. No, I'm kidding. We're hosting today Minko Gechev. And I think I first met Minko 4 years ago at Angular Connect. And he's not only a great developer, he's also a really nice person. Besides being a core team member, Minko also known for his amazing software engineer podcast. And I have to admit that every time I need motivation, I just open Minko profile on GitHub that looks like that. Minko will give a talk right after me, and then will stay with us for a Q&A session that will be held by just a random guy I met yesterday at the bar. The immediate question I have to ask Minko is, what's happened in those 2 days, Minko? Where have you been? The question was, what's happened in those 2 days? This is your GitHub profile. It's I think it's nah, it's okay, it's a joke. So Shai Reznik will be our Q&A session later today. You also have to prepare your questions ahead, and for that we have two important links for you. The first one is a Q&A link. This is the first one. I will also share them in the chat right after my talk. And we have also a raffle for a free ticket for a workshop, which is the second link. So those two links will be in the chat right after I finish my talk, but you can just copy and paste them and ask any question you like that Minko going to answer just after his talk. Now let's start from the first talk for today. I'm going to talk about custom components templates. And working as a consultant means you see lots of good code variations, but also many common mistakes. One of the most popular mistakes I see is when developers creating a functional component, but then start to extend it to support more and more template features. Where's the mistake? Lots of developers will expand their component using more inputs and ngIf to adjust the templates, instead of just letting the consumers controlling the template by themselves. A short intro by myself. For those who don't know me, I'm Eliran. I'm the founder of eSquare.io, which is the leading front-end consulting firm in Israel. I'm a Google developer expert for Angular, part of Angular in Depth, and a community leader in the Israeli scene. So let's start from our story. Imagine the following scenario. You just nominated to be the developer who's in charge of a huge organization UI library. Every component you're creating will be used by more than one team, and you just been asked to create a new image swiper component. The requirements are it should get image sources as an input, it should support trackpad swiping, and it should have next and pref buttons to navigate in slides. So if you know me, you know that in any of my talk, I have to do some sessions of live coding. So let's start with creating the swiper. First, let's add an input of the slides, which be a string array. And we know that we also need to implement a slide method, which will get the direction. The direction will be a number. Now let's create a template. So I will create a swiper wrapper, and here the slider. Inside the slider, I will create slide that I will iterate with ng4. Let slide of slides. And for each slide, I will just print the image with the image source binding. Let's also add two buttons. The first one for the next. Click slide with +1. Next. And also one for the pref. -1 and pref. Now let's make this swiper really works with some CSS. So I'm adding this swiper class, position relative. My slider will be overflow x scroll, and I'm using the scroll snap type. Scroll snap type x mandatory. And also I can use the display flex to have them one by one. Now each and every slide will get mean width of 100% of the view of the width viewport, height of 500 pixel, scroll snap align start, and I also going to add a display flex just to center everything, justify content center and align items center. Let's also add for the controllers some styling. So the position will be absolute with top 250 pixels, and next we'll have right 30 pixel, and prev will have left of 30 pixels. Pretty easy. Now we also need to control the slidings. So in order to do that, I'm going to add slides positions, which is going to be an array of numbers. And I'm going to add here a constructor will inject the document of type document, and I'm going to add a private method get slides positions, which first going to initialize the slide position to be an empty array, and then going to iterate with the document. With the document, I'm going to query selector all my slides, and for each and every one, I will get the slide, which will be an HTML element, and I just want to push it to the slide position. I want to push the div offset left. Okay, now I'm also implementing the after viewing it lifecycle. And after viewing it, I'm going to call this get slides position in order to populate the slides position. Now I can also implement the slide itself. Slide will get the direction by getting the number if increasing by 1 or decrease by 1. Okay, so what's going to happen here is first let's add the current position, current index. It's going to be a number. You know what? It's going to start from 0. Let's initialize it. Now this current index plus equal the direction. I also want to make sure I'm still in bounds, so I have to add 2 ifs to check if the current index is less than 0. If so, I want to set it to the slides position length -1. And the same goes to the other side. If it's bigger from this slides positions length -1, I want to set it to be the first index. Okay, now that we have that, we can again use the document to query selector this slider. Here it should be slide. The slider itself, and scroll to left this the slides position in the index, in the current index, and the behavior should be smooth. Amazing. Seems like we finished with the first steps. Let's update consumer 1 that he can start using the image swiper. We have here some data. Okay, we have just an image list, which is an array of objects with num and image URLs. Let's go to consumer 1 and use the app swiper. And first, let's initialize a class member slides, which we equal the image list, and let's map it to only the image URLs. Slides will be equal to the slides, and let's test it. I'm just checking in the chat that everything is alright, so let me know that if nothing pops up in the chat. Can you zoom a little bit? Whoa, it was too late to see that, but I promise to zoom now. Well, I have the image swiper that consumer 1 is using, and if I'm swiping with my trackpad, I'm so sorry that you can't see me swiping with my hands, but if I swipe with my hands on the trackpad, you can see that I have a smooth swiper. I also have the controllers here, the next, which take me to the next one. And if I'm out of bound, it will take me to the first one. And the same goes to the prev button. Pretty cool. We finished with the first part. Let's go back to our slides. And now things get complicated. Consumer 2 really likes your swiper. He really wants to use it, but not only for images. He also wants to control the swiper navigation with his custom events. Let's say, by the way, that you want to use your swiper just to show text, not images. And I already know this guy. New UI requirements will probably keep coming each and every day. Let's rethink. Adding it, the first things come to my mind, by the way, is that I can just add an input, okay, and control the template by ngIfs. I can check whether I'm passing an image series or just a string array. But if I will do that, I will probably ruin my neat component, which is I just created and I'm really proud of. And the second thought I have is, what if I can give my consumers full control on the template? The truth is I actually can, and let's see how we can do it. So let's go back to our code. Let me know if it's big enough. I think that should do it. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is to add another input to my swiper and call it slides template. This will be a ThemplateRef any. Now, once I did that, I can go to my swiper template, and instead of just showing the image slides, I will wrap it in an ngTemplate and call this template the default template. Now, in order to use this template, I will use an ng container with the input of ngTemplateOutlet, and I will use the slides template, which I got as an input, or the default template. And with that, I have a default. I'm going to use the slides template as my default, but fall back to the default template if nobody will use this input from outside. Great. Now, in order to use the template, I also need to expose the slide reference. So ngContainer has another input, ngTemplateOutlet context, which I can use like that. I can just use the $ implicit. And once I refer the $ implicit to my slide, any declaration from other consumers will default to this one. So let's go to consumer 2 and let's set eSlides. He will use the speaker list. By the way, it's just a string array of names Eliran, Minko, and Shai. And inside the template, I will use the app swiper with the slides equal to my slides. And here, inside my component, I can create my template, call it my slides template, and use the let name, and just print the name. Let's go back to consumer 2. Wait a second. Slides template. I have the slides template or the default. $ implicit should be the slide. Okay. Something not working. Let's see what. Oh, yeah, of course. I didn't pass the slides template. So here I have the slides template, and I will use my slides template. And now, once I did that, I can see a swiper with only strings. I can add whatever I want. I can add speaker name is, and I will get speaker name is and the slide reference, which is pretty cool. And I still have the functionality. Okay, consumer 2, as we remember, also wanted to control the navigation by himself. So let's add functionality also for that. Let's go back to the swiper, and here inside the swiper, I will add a nav object. The nav object will have two properties. The one is prev for previous, which call the slide method with -1, and next, which will call slide with +1. How I'm using this nav object from outside, I can go to my template outlet context and expose it. I can create another property called navigation, which equal to nav. And now consumer2 needs only to refer to that navigation. It can create another let directive nav and set it to the navigation. Let's say that consumer2 want to create is button, okay, that on click will use the nav next method. And here I want to show click here to move to the next speaker. Let's wait for a second. Okay, and now when he clicks on is button, he still got the functionality from the swiper functionality. Okay, and with that, we actually let our consumers fully control over the templates without ruining any smooth or clean code practice, and just keeping the functionality of the swiper of our UI component, to be exact. Okay, I'm back to my slides, and actually this was the last thing I had for you today. So let's summarize. Using ngTemplateOutlet can give our component consumers full control over the templates without adding redundant inputs or ngIf. ngTemplateOutlet context can expose any inner component functionality. If you're building UI libraries, if you're using storybooks, or you're in a big company, but not only, I really recommending you to use it almost everywhere, because it will make your UI components much easier to work with. That's it. Before we go, good opportunity to remind you that if you need anything, help with Angular, don't hesitate to reach out. Here at eSquare.io, and you can find me on social media at Eliran Eliassy, eliassy.dev or eSquare.io. And that's it for me for today. We can move to our next speaker, Minko. Thank you very much. By the way, slides and code will be published in the meetup info. And in the meanwhile, I will share on the chat the link for the Q&A session and the raffle. Minko, you can go ahead. Yeah. Second, Minko, your connection is not that good. Wait a second. Yeah, try again. Oh, just a second. Wait a second, Minko. They're saying that they don't hear you. Let me check if I set the audio right. Nobody here. Wait. My microphone setup. Try now.
Hello.
I think it should be good right now.
Let's wait for a few minutes. Okay. Oh yeah, it worked.
Oh.
Someone said, now we hear. Yes, awesome. Okay. Yeah, I was explaining my life story pretty much with my GitHub contribution streak. Here you can see how I joined Google here in November. So I was so overwhelmed with what was happening in my onboarding experience that I didn't contribute anything for almost a week. So that was a tragedy. And here recently, you can see where we started validating Ivy with external libraries, right here. So yeah, a lot of, and my first contribution and so on and so forth, but you can spend hours there. Cool. So today I prepared a really short presentation, actually. I wanted to give you a very high-level overview on some of our motivation for getting your team to move in the direction that we're moving right now. It's not too technical. We're going to talk a little bit about theory about programming language design, but just a little bit. If you have more technical questions, I would love to discuss them at the end of the presentation in the Q&A session. So Angular right now is being used in over 2,000 projects inside of Google. We are showing up this number not only to show that like Google is using Angular, like obviously Google would be using Angular since it is a technology that is being developed at Google, but also to show you that we have really high test coverage because of that. Each of these 2,000 projects has a lot of different unit and integration tests, and we have really high test coverage. So this is helping us to stay stable across major and mostly minor and patch versions, and understand what are the exact breaking changes that are happening across major version upgrades and releases, so that we can know what migrations we should release both internally and externally. I accept this Google validation as some kind of a large CI, which has its own benefits both internally and externally. So to reach the stage, we went through like many different back and forths. I'm going to talk about dynamic and static systems in a little bit, but it's a pretty long journey, and it is an ongoing journey right now. The latest release from Angular is the version 10. We're supposed to release it next week. We're supposed to release it actually this week, this Wednesday, but we postponed the release a little bit because we wanted to validate a few extra things. We wanted to make sure that the configuration that we are releasing as part of Angular CLI does not bring extra complexity to most folks, and we also wanted to work on some internals of the compiler and make sure that everything we're preserving the stability and we're not regressing in any way. So today I would want to discuss a little bit of the theory behind all of it. You're not going to see too many code snippets today, actually probably none, but we're going to talk about predictability and flexibility. In general, these are very common trade-offs that we can do in real life as well. It's great when we're predictable, I guess, to a certain extent, but also we're also often looking for some flexibility. You can think about it as preparing your day-to-day schedule. For example, waking up at 6:30 every day, doing a lightweight workout right after that, having your morning coffee, having breakfast, going to work, staying there until 5:30, and coming back home. This is pretty predictable. There is not too much space for improvisation or for flexibility at this point. But at a certain point, you may hit exceptional situations where you have to destroy this predictability. So here you'll need to introduce a little bit of flexibility in order to deal with real world scenarios that happen to you. For example, going to the doctor or going for a dentist appointment, like all these pleasant things, or sometimes even vacation. So you're going to destroy your predictable schedule in order to introduce this dynamic or flexible behavior in your life. In the context of programming languages, this is more well known as static versus dynamic behavior or trade-offs, because we really want to have both, but they're often competing concerns. If we put different programming languages on this axis, we're going to see that we have Idris, Haskell, and Rust. These are all really static languages, very close to the static axis. And we have dynamic languages such as Go, well, probably Ruby and JavaScript are better examples, which are very close to the dynamic axis. So Haskell is a really static language. It has super powerful type system, which is pretty much the state-of-the-art type theory research right now. And although it provides a lot of compile time guarantees, it doesn't enable dynamic behavior in a really convenient way. I'm not saying that you cannot achieve the same things with Haskell that you could achieve with JavaScript. Just you have to follow a much stricter path in Haskell compared to using JavaScript. Even Rust is a great language which provides some memory management compile time guarantees. And a lot of people complain that Rust doesn't make them productive at the beginning because they will have to fight with the compiler a lot in order to enable certain behavior. TypeScript is probably somewhere in the middle. It's really well optimized for dynamic behavior, and it also provides great static guarantees. So it provides great development experience because of these two features. Another interesting thing is that it's easy to go from the static to the dynamic world. Because in the static world, you just have a lot of constraints. You have many different rules. It's like playing a super complicated board game, which just aims to make your life complicated. And it just something which feels like work, I guess. And going to the dynamic spectrum, you should just drop some of these rules. However, going from dynamic to static often is pretty hard. Imagine if you start with a very dynamic programming language and you would want to make it static. For example, add type annotations to all the different JavaScript programs in the world. This could be really tricky because most of the JavaScript applications out there are not well typed. So you would have to go through thousands of years of migration process. If we put this into a more practical context, we're going to see that the static systems, they provide some really good guarantees, some really convenient features. For example, compile time optimizations. For static systems, the compiler can look at your source code and reason about it without executing your program. So here, it will be also able to transform your program into a more efficient version of itself. This is something similar to what we do with Ivy. We look at your templates and we generate efficient JavaScript instructions that can render and change the text, your templates, in the most efficient way. Static systems also provide good IDE and text editor support. Again, because your IDE can communicate with the language server of your programming language or framework and help you out with different auto-completion suggestions. On the other side, if you are very static, you can really hard, it's going to be really hard for you to lazy load components. Because if everything needs to be available at compile time, it will be hard for you to provide some kind of a variable path from which you would want to download a particular JavaScript file. If everything is static again, you can almost certainly will not be able to dynamically assemble user interface. For example, dynamically build a dashboard based on some metadata. And this is a quote from myself. I'm sure that I'm not the first one who have reached out to this conclusion, but the build error is the second best thing that can happen to you. That's my personal opinion. The best thing is obviously to make your program work from the first time and to write bug-free software. But we all know that that's pretty complicated, especially with the large systems that we're building nowadays. And here is an example for this. Actually, a couple of years ago, folks from Microsoft and from the academia, they did a research. They looked at a couple of dozens of open source projects, and they analyzed their issue tracker. So for each one of the issues in the issue tracker of these open source projects, they try to predict, they try to guess whether the TypeScript type system would have been able to catch this issue as part of the build process. And this issue would have never happened, and it wouldn't have to be reported and like occurrent at runtime in your user source code, your user's execution. So they found out that about 15% of the bugs would have been detectable by using TypeScript or Flow. Imagine if these projects were using TypeScript or Flow, they would have had 15% fewer bugs. And this is with version 2.0 of TypeScript. Since then, the TypeScript time system became much more powerful. It is much more expressive right now, and also it allows you to figure out a lot of things ahead of time. And they fixed a lot of issues in this type system as well from Microsoft. So yeah, currently we are almost at 4.0. 4.0 is coming in August. Imagine how much powerful the type system is now. We'll be able to probably catch like 5 to 10% of issues or so. Now, if we want to put this into the context of Angular and AngularJS, we can think of Angular as a very dynamic system. You can do anything you want. You can get this $compile and like pretty much do absolutely anything you want without having any guarantees from the build time. The good thing is that you don't really need a build process. Like you can just take a bunch of script tags and put them on a page and everything is going to work. So you will not have to wait for your program to compile or to get type checked. But at the same time, you're not getting too many of the other guarantees. Or you're getting some of them, but partially, not as well as you get them in a more static system. So for version 2 with Angular, we knew it's really hard to go from dynamic to static. That's why we started with a very static system originally. We saw that this is powerful, but at the same time, it is a little bit restrictive and doesn't provide the development experience that we were hoping for. So we went a little bit more on the dynamic portion with version 4.0. With version 9, with Ivy, we made things more dynamic, but at the same time without ignoring some of the other benefits that we were getting. For example, compile time type checking. We are still very much focused on this, and we even worked on improving the type checking experience without sacrificing any static properties, and at the same time getting some of the dynamic behavior that developers need. For example, more convenient way of lazy loading components without thinking of ng factories. Now, let us speak a little bit in what's coming up with version 10, which should land either this or next week. The two big things that we have been working on, aside from a bunch of different fixes around Ivy, are opt-in strict flag in order to be a little bit more restrictive, but at the same time provide more compile time optimizations, and increasing visibility. The increasing visibility portion relates to how we will be working, how we would want to be working with community in the future. It is related to increasing the visibility of our roadmap and working closer with community members who are excited about the future of Angular and who want to contribute in different ways. I can talk about this later if you have specific questions. Now we can talk about the technical part, opting into a stricter mode. So with the strict mode, we'll be bringing a couple of new restrictions because constraints are good, right? We'll be enabling stricter TypeScript type checking. It has plenty of benefits. We'll be talking about them just in a second. We'll enable strict templates for Angular as well. This is an opt-in mode, just as a reminder. If you create new projects, you'll be able to opt in into this mode of Angular, and if you like it, please provide us feedback. But by default, you'll be using the current standard configuration. On top of that, in the strict mode, you'll be also making sure that you can only opt in into ES5 support. If you remember, in version 8, we introduced differential loading, and we started shipping ES 2015 bundles together with ES5 bundles of your application so that developers who are using the latest browser features, capabilities, would not have to pay for legacy polyfills or legacy syntax. So opting into ES5, allowing you to use ES 2015 by default without ES5, is going to improve the loading experience of folks further. You'll be just shipping more expressive syntax and fewer polyfills. By default, in strict mode, you wouldn't be able to use CommonJS dependencies. If you want to, you can enable this, but by default, this will be forbidden because CommonJS is much harder to optimize. There is an entire blog post that I wrote some time back on web.dev, which explains how the bundlers work and why CommonJS is pretty much impossible to optimize in the general case. We'll be also assuming that your source code has reduced side effects so that Webpack can more efficiently tree shake your bundles. All right, so this means that you'll be getting more of these, but as you probably remember, getting these type errors is a good thing because you're catching more than 15% of the bugs that you're potentially going to have at a good time. Also, having stricter type checking is going to allow us to have more accurate information about your project. We will know exactly what the type of the individual symbols in your projects are, which would allow us to make more efficient ng update migrations. Well, the things that stricter type checking enables are quite a few. I would want to just share a little bit about the optimized internationalization pipeline, which is brought to us thanks to different static behavior and assumptions that we have about your source code. And finally, I'm going to just briefly mention Angular Universal and how this predictable project structure helps us to automatically deploy your application with a single command. So internationalization. I know a lot of feature requests have been around runtime internationalization in Angular. And I don't think we have been communicating really well enough why we are skeptical towards such implementation. So the runtime internationalization that many folks are asking about is pretty much allowing you to ship many different languages for your web app and just having like buttons for switching across them. When you click a particular button, folks are expecting to dynamically update all the different strings to the new language that the user has selected. Although this seems powerful, it introduces a lot of different performance bottlenecks. For example, well, you'd have to ship all these different language files in the browser. You may think that, well, yeah, but I can lazily load them. That's an alternative. But you'd have to have data binding in order to swap the individual strings. Data bindings means additional runtime overhead, since there are some comparisons that's going to be happening. And on top of that, extra instructions that would have to generate as part of the compile time step of Ivy in order to enable this data binding. And how often users are changing the language of their application. Like maybe in order to see how this works, they can change quickly across different languages. But my guess is that if someone wants to use a particular language, they're going to select it and stay on it for unlimited period of time until eventually you reset it, since you have like their session expires or something like this happens. So we're here, that's another trade-off. We're making a trade-off for enabling a lot of compile time optimizations for a certain, maybe temporal, one-time user inconvenience, which the user may even not notice. Here is how the internationalization pipeline is working right now. First, we're compiling your application with ngC. We're discovering all the different internationalization markers that you have in your application, and we're replacing them with some markers, with some extra markers that are something like placeholders that allow us to directly insert the particular translation inside of your templates as part of the build step. So we're going to compile your application once, and right after that, for each individual language, we're going to generate a new version of your application. This way, statically, you would have n number of versions of your application for each individual language. What we did in Ivy is to optimize the build time experience. So you would now not have to build your application n different times for n different languages. You'll build it only once, and right after that, we'll perform n different replacements, which are pretty cheap, even for large applications. And now the last thing is Angular Universal. So probably you have noticed, and I talked about this on a couple of conferences, and also we shared it on Twitter, that you can deploy to Firebase right now just by having two commands. You can run ng-add angular/fire, and right after that run ng-deploy. I guess this is Shai.
Shai, be quiet.
Hi, Shai.
You will bet.
So yeah, this was only possible because we make some assumptions on about the structure of your project, and we are setting some extra constraints that are making the system a little bit more static. So by making the system a little bit more static, we're able to enable such development experience. It's not something unique for Angular, of course. Most of the things that are happening nowadays in web in general, they have been discovered in the 80s or like 70s. And so we're just rediscovering them right now in different fashion. This is typical behaviors for different platforms, and it is enabled because of such static assumptions that the platform can make. There are other examples as well. For example, because of the static routing structure in Angular, we're able to statically analyze your application and extract the individual routes that you have. This enables a variety of cool things, such as predictive prefetching, with tools like Gechev, where we can use machine learning and data analytics to implement the most efficient prefetching strategy for your application, or even automated pre-rendering. Scully is another example for Jamstack Citizen, which is another like static site generator developed by HeroDesk. It's not an Angular core product that allows to build static websites that are really fast to load. And yeah, how would you be able to update to version 10? Well, currently, since we haven't released a final yet, you would have to opt in by specifying like ng update Angular CLI at next. But if you wait with a couple of days, once we release the final, you should be able to make the migration automatically without specifying conversion. And this shouldn't be a breaking release for you. We aim to experiment with different flags in this release in order to eventually enable them by default in the future. That was pretty much everything. I really hope that I was able to demonstrate how having some assumptions, like being able to make assumptions about your project and about the structure statically, can enable a lot of powerful features, varying from compile time optimizations for faster applications to better development experience and even more quality software using type systems. Thank you. Yeah, if you have any feedback about my talk, I would love if you can leave it at ngv.io/talk. And yeah, I'd love to continue talking about Angular in the Q&A session.
Thank you, Minko. So, Shai?
Yes.
You want to open your camera?
Hello.
Oh. As expected.
How are you? Yes, I came on the bike really fast.
Where is your mask?
And hello. What?
Where is your mask?
Oh, I left it at home. No, it's in my pocket in case a policeman will arrive. So I will show him, hey, I got the badge, and leave me alone.
It's now 500 seconds.
Good job,
Shai.
Minko.
Thank you. Oh, you have a helmet.
Yeah, it's for precaution. It's the corona can hit you in the head, so no, I want to be like Bonnie, so I put the helmet. Anyway, so let's see. We have a Q&A, right?
Shai, you
We have
going to
people-
share your screen?
Yeah, let me see if there are. Let me continue what you already started. Oh, nice. We have, we have here. Okay, yeah. Let me share my screen, and we'll do something. Let's see. Let me share it. Present now. Your entire screen, and let me share this one. Okay, awesome. Can you hear? Can you see my everything? Oh, I prepared some surprises for you.
What kind of surprises?
Let's-
Shai?
No, you don't want to know. Okay, so we have a few questions, and we'll start with a favorite person of mine, Giora Goodstate. Goodstate? Let me know if I said it correctly in English. Okay, so let's see the question. Can you see the question?
Yeah.
Ivy add new capabilities regarding lazy loading of modules outside the scope of lazy loaded routes.
So yeah, I didn't add anything. You just didn't add anything. You just it just makes it simpler to lazy load components because we no longer have ng factories. Previously, in order to lazy load a component, you were supposed to load ng factories, which were generated at build time, and you didn't really have a way to reference them while developing the application since they didn't exist. And you had to do some extra Angular JSON configuration, which wasn't really convenient. So I would just remove this boilerplate. Now we can lazy load components simpler because you no longer have ng factories. And we will be working on even more like ergonomic APIs in the future. But there are a couple of other things that we need to do before that. So
Cool, thank you. You get this sound. Okay, awesome. So let's thank you, Giora, for the question. Oh, by the way, Giora asked another question. When is Angular changing its official logo to Bonnie? So Yeah, so think about it, okay? Think about it, and we'll go in the meantime to another question by Dmitry Orlov. Another cool person. Will Protractor return to live? Or should I look for, I'm reading it in an Israeli accent, so you will understand, okay? Will Protractor return to live, or should I look for alternatives?
Making sure that Protractor is available and functioning properly is really important for us. So we'll keep maintaining it. If you find other alternatives you like more, feel free to use them as well. We'll keep shipping Protractor as part of the CLI, and we'll make sure it doesn't regress over time with the browser updates.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see. All the questions are for Minko, but maybe we'll find someone for Eliran as well. If not, Eliran, you can submit a question and ask yourself something.
Yeah, I probably will do that.
Okay, you thought about it. Okay, let's see. The next question by another good guy, Roy Tr. What are the plans for the future of reactive forms? Oh, and in an Israeli accent, what are the plans for the future of reactive forms?
I can answer that.
There are a lot of great ideas. Yeah, go ahead.
I saw that Kara, and actually I also tweeted about it. I saw that Kara just comment on, I think this is the number one issue on the Angular GitHub project. That now Angular is working on type forms.
Yeah, we will be working on type forms. Yeah, there are some pressing things before that. For example, making sure that we work well with TypeScript 4.0, Protractor is very important as well. But definitely reactive forms is on top of the backlog as well. So we will prioritize this, and there is a lot of feedback we got from community and a lot of great ideas. So we will have to digest all this feedback and go from there.
By the way, did you add the thing where you can check all the validations at once and not like write custom code for that?
I'm sure we'll have this in the final design document as well. Yeah.
Nice.
We will. So that's another thing. When we start working on this, we will do our best to share the design documents with a larger audience to collect feedback sooner. It might not be like absolutely everyone, because we'll have quite a lot of feedback and we might not be able to take action quickly enough, but we will try to share our thoughts ahead of time, for sure, to make sure that we're resolving all the use cases that community needs.
Very political correct. Nice. But yeah, thanks. Okay, let's see another question from Anonymous, a personal friend of mine. Okay, Anonymous. This is from the hacker group. Okay, they ask, when do you plan, in an Israeli accent because they are Israelis, when do you plan to release the private API detect changes, mark dirty, and render component? I'm reading this like this to give you a sense of Israel. You know, it's like you're here and falafel and trina. You know, okay.
I can answer in Bulgarian accent.
Yeah, you should.
Go for it, Minko.
We are not planning to no. This is too awkward. Okay, so there is one initiative that we are looking at right now. For example, how we can make Angular work without zones. And as part of this initiative, Mark Dirty in particular it's a key feature. So we're going to share the roadmap on what we'll be working on next. Probably right after version 10, and you'll be able to see where Angular, like zoneless Angular stays. And around that effort, we'll be able to experiment with making Dirty a public API. Regarding render component, this is related to another effort. So imagine if you can render standalone components without necessarily having to declare an ng module, that's when render component is useful. So we will be looking into this as well in the next a couple of months or quarters. We're going to share, like as I mentioned, the roadmap publicly soon. Once we start looking into this, we'll make render components a public API. So this is just related to other bigger efforts that we'll be focusing on.
Awesome. So the answer is it depends. Like a classic consultant answer. I have also a question which I leave to the end, but let's continue. We have another top question by another good fellow, Ron Netzer, which asks, what will be the next big thing that Angular currently works on?
There are a few big things. One of them, probably you'll hear about it soon. The other thing is, but it should be a surprise. And the other thing is just like simplifying.
What is it? An escape room? We need to guess the next surprise.
Yeah, we'll take you in an escape room and close you there.
And you need to figure out the next feature, and then you can leave.
And implement it. And implement the migration for Google.
So okay, so you have a surprise. So it's the same answer as before. Like after version 10, you will release the treasure box with all the features documents.
Maybe we'll still leave some space for surprise about the. So when you look at the version, the backlog, most of the things that we'll be focusing on there are like addressing community concerns, mostly around reactive forms, and simplifying the framework a little bit. Thinking about optional ng modules and also protractor is a big thing there. So you pretty much hit a big portion of the roadmap already.
I see. Okay, so just look at the backlog. That's what you're saying. Okay, cool. Let's move on to the next question by Anonymous, which probably my guess is Eliran. Okay, let's see. Why Bazel was removed from the CLI? Same hacker group.
It wasn't part of the CLI. It was an optional. It was kind of an experiment to see how we can make Bazel work with the CLI. Actually, I was working on this when I joined the team, and I spent a lot of time looking into how we can make Bazel work externally for everyone. And I don't think personally, and like the teams took the stance as well, that Bazel is the best choice for every developer out there. It works really great at scale, but at the same time, it's a very, that is actually great fits the talk, like static versus dynamic systems. Bazel is a really static system. It needs to know the build graph ahead of time really well. And you declare this build graph by pretty much writing it yourself. So you specify the dependencies between the different modules in build files. And you use a Python-like language called Starlar, which is not exactly Python, but looks like Python. And that's like most developers out there, especially those who are developing with JavaScript, they don't want to describe their build graph for each project they're working on. However, if you're building a really large project at scale in a large company, when you have like hundreds of components or thousands of components probably, then Bazel is going to be great for you because of this static build graph. It will be able to do a lot of compile time, a lot of optimizations in order to build your project in the most efficient way. So Bazel is great for some projects and not necessarily working as part of the CLI, because working as part of the CLI is going to first make you deal with two different build systems, with the CLI itself and with Bazel, and eventually with Webpack, if we run Webpack with Bazel. And second of all, you would not be able to take advantage of the best features of Bazel, which are statically describing this build graph if we hide this complexity from you. So that's the long answer.
So I remember when we talked about it, you said that for medium apps, it might not be like the optimal solution, but for maybe large apps who suffer from like long build times and all that stuff, that might be a better solution, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people are using Bazel now without the CLI, and they're successful with it. Like we have, for these 2,000 applications inside of Google, we're using pretty much the same build system, and it works fine for most of the teams. We have still one of cases where we're debugging their build to see why it is slow, but for most of the people it works fine at scale. But they're not using it with the CLI, that's another thing. They're using it as like standalone.
I see.
But wait, Minko,
okay, let's move.
Just a second, Shai. In the Bazel case, what can you recommend large companies that struggles with build times to do immediately?
Yeah, there are a couple of things. So one of them would be, I see a couple of different stages. So one of them is to, you can decompose your application into multiple different like sub-applications or libraries and applications, like what we allow you to do with Jaeger CLI, although we don't provide incremental builds there. If this doesn't work for you well and you would need to scale it further, you can go to NX. NX is great kind of alternative to like Bazel, which provides good development experience and fewer compile time optimizations compared to Bazel, only for TypeScript and JavaScript applications. So that's decent alternative as well. And if you would want to go really at scale and you have cross-language dependencies like Java, TypeScript, C++, stuff like that, then and Go, you can go to Bazel. Bazel is going to be the best possible alternative there for you.
Nice, thanks. Okay, let's go to the next question. Do you really plan to get rid of zones? What will be the alternative?
That's going to be something that we will investigate. We have plans for this, and obviously we don't want to make things break, so we'll be careful on how we implement them. But manual execution of change detection combined with some slightly modified state management would be a good solution. We're actually experimenting with, I wouldn't say that we're experimenting. We're just thinking about it, but there are higher priority things that need to happen before that. So I cannot share alternatives right now because things may change dramatically since we start implementing this feature.
I see. So another escape room. But that's okay. It's good that you. I'm trying to break you, but you keep. You keep your guard. Good. Good job.
I'm careful because of Ivy mostly. Because we talked about Ivy 3 years ago, and it took us 3 years ago to ship it. And so
don't commit. After Angular 2, right? So okay, let's see. Okay, this is another question about zones. So, yep. And what's next? You have to. Okay, boosting Angular component. Okay, so another good question by the same hacker group. Recommendations for boosting Angular components performance apart from using on-push strategy and pure pipes. I don't see a question there, but it's like a statement. No, I guess a what is supposed to be there somewhere. What are the recommendations?
Oh, can you give?
These are pretty much enough for most applications. You can start, and I can share some of my thoughts as well. You're probably building more in your applications than I do right now.
Actually, one of the best approaches I'm using right now is trying to reduce change detection by using reactive approaches, push-based architecture to be exact. This is mainly the thing that I'm trying to do, working separations of components where I know that some events will trigger change detection, so I'm trying to separate those components to different components and just work with inputs and outputs. But basically, push-based architecture is one of my main things that I'm doing to reduce change detection.
Nice. Cool. Okay. Another good question by let's see another question by Giora. Not necessarily for Minko. Haha. It's for me as well. No, it's for Eliran. I'm just the host. And so what is the best way to learn Angular in depth? Will Angular I/O be extended to include more advanced content and best practices, especially for new people that want to get really good at Angular?
Wow.
What do you say, Eliran?
I think that the term Angular in depth is one of my favorite places. I'm also a writer there, and I think the in-depth Slack channel is amazing with few amazing talents over there. So this is maybe my first place to go. I know that in one of my previous talks with Steven, I know that he mentioned that he want to create sort of a short video posts of how to do some best practices with Angular. I'm not sure if somebody in the team is actually working with it, but I think Minko, this can be a good spot.
Yeah. So I would recommend Angular in depth as well. Angular I/O. So there are a lot of different advanced use cases, and we cannot possibly maintain all of them on Angular I/O ourselves, but we can link to some more advanced tutorials from Angular I/O to different articles on Medium or in Angular in depth or like other community blog posts. So I would recommend you if you would want to go more in depth in a certain area than Angular I/O offers, in depth is definitely a good way to go, or just look at the source code. It's usually the most accurate research, although it's a little bit hard to get started with originally.
Testangular.com. Sorry, I have a cold.
Oh, Shai.
Okay.
If I want to learn about testing Angular, how can I do that?
Good question. You know, I have this website with a free workshop. Okay, so
You can mention it.
thank you for that. I know. Here, I mention it in the next question by Roy L. Or Roy. What is your opinion? The most compatible, stable, fast library for unit testing for Angular. Currently, we are using Jest on normal NX project, and it is very buggy, slow on Windows, unlike Mac, which is interesting. What do you think about that?
That's
An
interesting.
official recommendation is, you can go ahead.
No, you go
our
first.
official recommendation is it's kernel with Jasmine.
Mm-hmm. But that's also slow at big projects.
Yeah, running
Unless
test
you-
conditional is what I use. What I do when my tests start getting a lot.
So you mean like running on only the stuff you're currently work on and stuff like that, like fdescribe and stuff like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, but
I
if
see.
you have more
So
than a few thousand tests in the same project, it won't help you really to just fdescribe or fit for specific suit.
That's interesting because Jest is built, like the whole architecture is built for like caching and performance and like the DX is very important there. And I feel like it's in terms of new features and like improvements and stuff like that, it's way ahead of like the stack that I see with Karma and Jasmine, and just looking even at the PRs and the efforts there, although they are, but it's more about like fixing bugs, the maintenance mode, and not like I don't know, leaping ahead. And the current stack, the slowness comes from Webpack mostly with Karma and Jasmine, I feel. And it might be better with Webpack 5, right? But maybe, I don't know. What's your take on that, Minko? On this, like the focus on speed in terms of testing?
So caching and running the tests. So here is an interesting thing. In Google, we're using Bazel for testing and for building our applications, and it provides incrementality, and it provides a dependency graph where we run tests only when the inputs of the test have been affected. And this way, we really don't need to have these features in Jasmine and Karma as well, right? Because they're going to be redundant, and probably they wouldn't be as accurate as Bazel. So we really don't need these features.
I see. So that's why. So may I be rude here and suggest that you should dog food, the stack without Bazel and feel the pain of running
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I'm dog fooding it with a couple of projects. I have like a couple of thousands of tests, not tens of thousands of tests. The CI is slow, for sure. They take time to execute on the CI. When I'm developing locally, I'm usually running only the tests about the functionality that I'm working on, so it's not a huge pain. It's not a huge pain for me.
Really? Okay. So for like one of my projects that I work on can be up to like, I don't know, 40 seconds every time I save. So it's pretty depressing.
And is it an ID project or?
This is what?
Is it an ID project?
Actually, no, but it's not using like DOM compilations, mostly class testing.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if because I read the optimization is about like compiling and stuff like that faster, right?
Yeah, we don't recompile components between tests unless necessary, which is rare.
By the way, Shai, now LNX also supports affected tests that you can run in your CI. Or also in when you develop.
That's why that's what I'm currently I suggested to my client to do until we'll test this. Maybe they don't want to move to Jest, so that's the second best, I think, solution. Okay, so let's move on to the. Did I mention testangular.com? Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's see. So let's see.
No, what is it, Shai?
Could Angular 10 be running in hybrid mode with AngularJS 1.7x? Interesting.
Yeah.
By Dimitri.
Yeah. It's same like other. No change in this direction.
Okay, awesome. Oh, another interesting question by Roy Tur. Do you think about making Angular native to fight React native? To fight.
So we're focused on enabling the best development experience for the web. So we are not thinking about a native development platform.
I see. So no Angular native.
What's good about Angular that you're actually building a platform, and then it doesn't really matter where it's running. You can run it natively by just using some wrappers like Flutter or Ionic. So there are alternatives inside Angular for React Native.
That's a good point. It's just not focused on our team. Otherwise, there is native scripts, there is Ionic. This is just not something that we maintain. We are focused on making Angular work well for the web, and anything else aside from that is mostly the focus of community. We obviously we're collaborating closely with Ionic to make sure that Angular works well for their platform and with NativeScript, but not something that we are prioritizing in our backlog.
I see. So that next question is very relevant. Maybe putting you on the spot here, but I know. So, ladies and gentlemen, I understand that Minko is not the entire Angular team. He didn't write the Angular website, but on the website it says that it's a mobile app framework.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's horrible, right? Yeah, that's horrible. Yeah, so
it was raising to an anchata. This is the term in Hebrew.
How is it?
It is raising to how do you say anchata, Eliran? Like in tennis, anchata, like when you hit, you're raising the ball to hit it. You know, this is like, you know, you put the egg and you leave it. It's an egg, you know. Never mind. Anyway, this is horrible. You say, right? And,
yeah, I shared in the chat a link. We want to fix this as soon as possible, and we have been wanting to fix this for a bit. So yeah, we will change this.
Okay.
We are in between two headlines. One of them is the modern web developers platform. I think we're going back and forth. If you look at the PR, it's hanging on there because I haven't approved it yet, but I'm almost there as well. We're reaching a consensus now.
Good, that's good. Keep you focused on the important stuff. Okay, another question, a long one. I will make it short by Ajit. And it seems like, okay, so our project have been growing every day with additional, I'm looking into state management solutions, but don't want to use NGRX, really too much. Onboarding, could just some lightweight solutions. I'm not sure it's for Minko, but everyone can suggest probably.
Maybe also Minko can answer, because
no, he cannot.
He cannot?
He cannot. He's biased.
Rumors said that the core team is looking for a solution for component states. So maybe you can tell us more about that.
Maybe that's the surprise he didn't want to talk about.
Maybe.
No, it's not a surprise.
Oh, okay.
Shai, you'd never get out of the escape room.
Damn it. Always happened to me. Always. And my parents need to get me out, you know, and to pay bail. Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to get out of it either. Yeah, Eliran, if you want, you can answer. It's there are mostly communities. Well, yeah, you can go ahead.
Actually, in small projects, I'm not using any third library projects. Angular has services. You can use RxJS. You can use the DI system, and can create your own state, application state. And now also with the new provided in functionality, you can also improve this state. But there's also amazing projects, community projects like Akita, NGXS. You don't have to use, most of our projects using now Akita, honestly. And
how is it?
Akita, it's super easy. It's actually, it's using the same idea. If you read the code, it's using the same idea of just taking the behavior subject and nexting the state. The amazing things about Akita, they provided you the DevTools, the Redux DevTools out of the box, and they have plenty of utils, Forms utils and other utils that you can just plug and play. And they also enforce immutability of the state, which is really important when you're working with components on change detection, strategy, and push. So Akita might be a good option if you don't want to use NGRX.
Nice, yeah, my suggestion as well. And I think the last question is an interesting one, not related to Angular, but to testing. What are your thoughts on testing private functions in code?
Oh,
Minko,
wow.
I'm curious to know what you think.
I usually do not test private functions in code. Yeah, I focus on the public interface of the class and try to ignore implementation details and allow them to potentially change.
Same here.
Yep, same here. This is by Ayelet Dahan. Sometimes in really, really rare cases, you might test, spy on some private thing. Sounds not good. Anyway, but it's like 0.0001% of the time. Most of the time, you should focus on the public stuff. Awesome.
So out of 1,000 tests, in one you would spy in private functions.
Yeah. Okay. So good math skills there.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. This is a guy who read compiler books, like have a book club with the Victor on compilers, no? Right, Minko?
It was with Trello, like, yeah, Victor left, but yeah, pretty much the same. Yeah, pretty much right.
So I'm not entering a contest with you because you will win. So I have a question to wrap it up, which is a more personal question. So you came from the community, you were involved in the project, contributing, you wrote a Codelizer, and you did a lot of stuff, and then you decided to join. So I wonder, how does it feel to go from being a community member to the core team? How was the all that transition and stuff like that, and how is it now for you?
I'm more careful on what I release and trying not to break things. I guess that's the biggest change. For example, I was building a new Angular 2 pretty much every other month when I wasn't part of the team. Now I realize that if you do that, and eventually at a certain point you're going to go bankrupt, you cannot maintain all these different tens or hundreds of tools, and people are going to use them. So you're going to have some potentially negative impacts on development experience, maintainability, and so on and so forth. So I'm a little bit more cautious in this sense. And that's, I guess, the biggest change that has happened. Just being more careful with.
So Shai, we're not using the Codelizer anymore.
Library.
I see. So we lost an open source creator, but we gained a very, very super professional team member, which is a very, very. I said it's one of the best acquisitions that Angular did, I think. And did you do the ceremony? The ceremony.
Yeah, with the sword.
Yeah, with swords and the costume. Yeah.
Tell the audience about it, Minko.
Okay. No, we cannot. It's a secret ceremony. I once saw it, and they swore me not to do that. So.
And you just did in front of all of the audience on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so these are all the questions. Thank you very much for answering everything and avoiding some of them, only some. But we will have probably more, sessions like this, and really, really happy that you're part of the team and part of the community. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Minko, thank you very much for joining. Minko, we're looking forward to see you next time in Israel, in person.
Yeah, likewise.
Exactly. We are already here, so don't say likewise. We are here in Israel.
It's close to Bulgaria anyway.
Kidding, but yeah. You have a hug waiting for you.
It's close to Bulgaria, so you can visit home.
Yeah. I actually have some plans for Bulgaria, so yeah, I'll be happy to see you soon too. And yeah, thank you very much for having me. And if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me at Gechev, and I'll be happy to chat about Angular.
Thank you very much, Minko. Great
Thank
to
you.
have you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you very much. Shai, it's only you and me.
What should we do? We can speak in Hebrew now,
I-
right? Because it's an Israeli meetup.
אהה.
איזה חר הוא היה, וואי, יאללה, איך הוא ענה תשובות לא לעניין. אנחנו עדיין משדרים? אוי, סליחה. לא
מלך
שמתי לב. איזה קטע.
רגע, אז באמת נעצור את זה, נגיד תודה רבה לכל מי שהיה. תודה לך, שי.
In English.
זהו,
בכיף, in
מה
English. I
האנגליש,
think
אחי?
we have some people from, right? No?
Yeah,
Anyway,
it seems
thank
like
you,
we have
תודה,
some...
Shabbat Shalom. Right? All that stuff. But thank you for...
אגב, שי,
אלירן.
בזכותך, בגלל שהייתי
כן.
צריך להקפיץ אותך מוקדם יותר בטלפון, עשיתי מיוט בהנגאוטס, ולא בהקלטה, וכולם שמעו את השיחה שלי איתך. זה היה מעולה.
שמעו שזה, אמרתי שאני בדיוק שם מכנסיים וכאלה, איזה קטע.
הם שמעו רק את הצד שלי.
די, מה...
כן, וכולם הולכים לי בצ'אט.
סתם אמרתי עכשיו את זה, איזה באסה. אבל היה הרבה אנשים, אני רואה פה, שאומרים תודה, הם לא שאלו שאלות, אבל אומרים תודה, רן וואלה, איזה כיף. עכשיו אני רואה כאילו את כל הזה.
היו לא מעט.
מגניב. תודה from Romania, thank you very much, Marius. או Florin Marius. Anyway. So thank you very much.
Yeah,
and that's
guys.
it, you have a closing slides or should we do the song and wrap it up?
No, that's it, I think. We had the
We should do
raffle,
the
but
song,
I'm not going
okay.
to hold everybody just for the raffle. So we're going to do the raffle and send the ticket to the chosen one.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now I
let's
see
say-
that I look like I'm in an aquarium. But anyway, next
Yeah,
time.
Achi, what
Okay,
happened to
so-
your camera? It seems like you...
Yeah, I should put, I don't know, probably the quality and stuff like that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Do the raffle and have a great night, everybody.
יאללה ביי.
Bye.